Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a time when being wanted didn't just mean you had a bounty on your head, it meant songs would be sung about you for centuries, and maybe, your ghost still hasn't stopped running. You're about to slip quietly into the darker corners of medieval history, where heroes were criminals, and criminals became legends. And yes, you probably won't survive this, but don't worry, it's the Middle Ages, no one really did. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is there. I always love knowing who's staying up way too late with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking down a narrow dirt road under a pale, flickering moon. The air smells of wet moss and wood smoke. Somewhere far away, a church bell tolls, not for you, not yet, but it's a reminder, in this world, danger always wears a crown. You're not a hero here. You're a wanderer, drifting through the centuries, following the faint echo of footsteps that history has tried so hard to erase. You stop at a crossroads. There's no signpost, just old wooden boards nailed to a tree. The names are barely legible now: Sherwood, Rouen, Florence, Dublin. Places where wanted souls once danced on the knife's edge between glory and doom. You can almost feel them, the outlaw in the forest, the witch at the stake, the pirate on the stormy sea. All hunted, all defiant. Somewhere nearby, a voice whispers from the dark, "They called us monsters, but they made the monsters." You turn your head, but no one's there. Just the wind, brushing through leaves like parchment pages turning themselves. You start walking again, the sound of your boots crunching through gravel. The medieval world opens up around you, a living, breathing contradiction. Cities reeking of smoke and sin, cathedrals rising like fingers reaching for forgiveness. The year might be 1347, or 1485, or maybe no year at all. Time doesn't move straight here. It swirls, like the mist curling around your ankles. Tonight, you aren't watching history, you're walking through it. You pass a wall plastered with rough drawings, wanted posters, nailed crookedly, ink running from the rain. The faces look oddly familiar. Some smile, some sneer. Beneath each, scribbled in uneven script, traitor, heretic, bandit, queen. You can't help but notice how thin the line is between those words. Maybe it's not a line at all, maybe it's just shadow. You glance at one poster, edges curled with age. The face is half hidden by grime, but you can see eyes that look straight through you. Beneath it reads, "Reward for the capture of the outlaw of Sherwood." Ah. So that's where you'll be heading first. But before you go, you stop again. You look at the torchlight dancing across the damp stone. The flicker reveals carvings, names etched by hand into the wall. Some known, some forgotten. You trace a few letters: Joan, Eric, Catherine, Flamel, Bruno. Names history punished for dreaming too loud. You wonder, what makes someone wanted? Is it the crime, or the courage to commit it in front of the world? Somewhere above, an owl calls. Its echo bounces between the trees, lonely and timeless. You follow the sound, because there's nothing else left to follow. The forest closes in. The moon dips lower, brushing treetops like a dying candle. You smell wet leaves and something else, something metallic. Blood, maybe. Or just the iron of old armor rusting under the soil. Every few steps, you pass the bones of a civilization, a broken sword, a rotten banner, the faint outlines of a forgotten campfire. The medieval world isn't gone, it's just sleeping. And tonight, you're walking through its dreams. The further you go, the more faces you feel watching you. Not ghosts, exactly, memories, waiting to be remembered. The kind of figures your teachers called villains, but the songs called heroes. Some died too soon. Some didn't die at all, at least not properly. You pause, feeling the air grow colder. You're standing at the edge of a clearing now. The trees part, revealing a single wooden gallows. The rope sways slightly, though there's no wind. Beneath it, a small wooden sign reads, "For those who lived louder than their kings." You can't help but smile. That's the kind of sentence that gets you killed in this century. A mainstream historian might tell you the medieval era was about knights, chivalry, and crusades, shining armor and noble causes. But if you listen closely, the whispers tell another version. One where the wanted, the exiled, the hunted, were the real architects of history. Because for every king on a throne, there were 10 men and women running from his wrath, shaping the world from the shadows. A quirky fact: did you know that medieval bounty hunters were often priests moonlighting for extra coin? Imagine confessing your sins to the guy who just turned in your cousin for 50 silver pieces. Scholars still argue whether it was hypocrisy or just survival. Maybe both. You take a slow breath. The air is thick with old stories, the kind that don't fit neatly into scrolls or sermons. You know now that tonight won't be about heroes or villains. It'll be about those who refuse to stay forgotten, even when the whole world wanted them gone. Your eyes adjust to the dark. The road ahead glows faintly with silver light. Somewhere down that path waits your first encounter, the archer who robbed the rich, mocked the law, and still managed to become a bedtime story. You pull your cloak tighter and step forward, toward Sherwood Forest. The night hums softly, as if it already knows what's coming. And as you disappear into the trees, the whispering voices fade behind you, for now. You step into the green hush of Sherwood Forest, though, to be honest, it's not exactly the emerald paradise your imagination promised. The air is damp and heavy, thick with the scent of mushrooms and wet bark. Somewhere above, the canopy sighs, letting faint streaks of moonlight fall through like silver spears. Every legend begins with a whisper, and Robin Hood's is no different. You can almost hear it now, boots brushing against leaves, an arrow being knocked, and a soft laugh that sounds too confident for someone with a price on his head. You pause by a moss-covered tree. There's an old carving on the trunk, "Robin Hood was here." The "Y" is a giveaway, definitely medieval graffiti. Scholars still argue whether that carving is genuine or just the work of a drunk 15th century prankster, but that's the fun part, isn't it? Legends always leave space for doubt. A twig snaps behind you. You turn, and there he is, not the Disney fox, not the polished movie hero, but a lean, mud-streaked man in tattered green, bow in hand, eyes that know exactly how much trouble you're worth. "You shouldn't be walking alone," he says with a grin. "The sheriff doesn't like strangers." You open your mouth, but before you can answer, he's already melted back into the trees. That's how he works, a flicker in the dark, a rumor you can't quite catch. You keep walking. The forest seems alive now, every rustle a whisper, every shadow a lookout. Sherwood isn't peaceful, it's a living conspiracy. You start noticing things, the half-hidden rope bridges, the smoky scent of cooking meat, the faint melody of a lute somewhere in the distance. You found them, the merry men. You crouch behind a fallen log, watching. There's little John, whose size isn't exaggerated, Friar Tuck, whose robe hides more wine stains than prayers, and Will Scarlet, polishing his dagger with almost romantic affection. They're laughing, eating, plotting, outlaws, sure, but also strangely free. The mainstream story says they stole from the rich and gave to the poor. But as one dusty chronicle notes, they sometimes borrowed from the poor too, a detail the ballads tend to skip. Scholars still argue whether Robin Hood was a noble rebel or just another bandit who knew how to market himself. You tilt your head, watching Robin step forward, raising a wooden cup. "To freedom," he says, and to the sheriff's headache. The men cheer, their voices blending with the wind. You can't help smiling. There's something irresistibly human about them, reckless, idealistic, doomed. A quirky fact: medieval England actually did have outlaw bands living in the forests. The Royal Archives list dozens of names: poachers, deserters, tax dodgers, who vanished into the greenwood. They weren't all heroes, but to the starving peasants, anyone who defied the crown was worth singing about. You move closer, listening to Robin talk strategy. His words are sharp, deliberate. He isn't just a thief, he's a tactician. Every ambush, every escape, every prank on the sheriff, it's theater. He knows the people need hope, and if he has to become a myth to give it to them, so be it. Somewhere deep inside, you realize this is why he's wanted. Not because he steals gold, but because he steals obedience. The sheriff of Nottingham can't hang a symbol. The forest grows darker as the campfire dims. Robin notices you watching and, for a moment, meets your gaze through the smoke. There's no fear in his eyes, just a strange, quiet sadness. Every story ends the same, he murmurs. They hunt you, they hang you, and then they sing about you. You blink, and he's gone again, swallowed by leaves. You walk on until you reach the edge of the forest, where the moonlight opens onto a dirt road. Ahead, a wooden gallows stands crookedly, rope swinging lazily in the breeze. You've seen it before, the same one from the crossroads. Beneath it, a small parchment flutters, wanted. Robin of Locksley. Reward, 100 silver marks. 100 marks. That's about the price of a decent warhorse, or 2 years' worth of bread for a village. You stare at it for a long moment. Behind you, the trees seem to shift. Maybe it's the wind, or maybe it's something else, the forest closing its mouth, hiding its favorite secret. You turn back toward the gallows and think about how strange it is, the same people who would cheer at Robin's hanging would later name their sons after him. History has always been good at forgiving the dead. As you start walking again, you catch one last echo from the forest, laughter, faint but real, fading into the night. And somewhere far ahead, another name waits on another poster. You just don't know it yet. The road pulls you out of Sherwood's whispering trees and into the cold drizzle of northern England. The land flattens, soaked in mist and memory. A crow lands on a fence post, watching you with the kind of knowing stare only English crows seem to have, judgmental, but mildly amused. You follow the sound of hooves. A royal carriage rattles by, gold crest glinting faintly through the fog. The guards don't see you, but the horses shy as they pass, snorting at something only they can sense. Maybe they know what you're about to find, a man whose name history buried under layers of rumor and bone dust, Richard III. You step through the old city gates of York. The cobblestones are slick, the air thick with the smell of ale, rain, and gossip. Everywhere, you hear his name whispered, the hunchback king, the usurper, the murderer of princes. But also, curiously, the reformer, the strategist, the last true Yorkist lion. Scholars still argue whether Richard III was a villain or just the victim of the greatest PR campaign in royal history, the Tudor one. You duck beneath a stone archway, your footsteps echoing faintly. Somewhere ahead, bells toll, slow and hollow, as if tolling for a ghost. You find yourself in a narrow lane, timber houses leaning so close together they nearly kiss above your head. A woman stands by a window, muttering, "He's coming back one day." You don't ask who. You already know. You stop at an inn, the Boar's Head, its sign creaking in the rain. Inside, the fire burns low, and the locals talk in hushed tones. A minstrel plucks a lute, singing softly. A crown of thorns, a crooked spine. They called him devil, he called it divine. You sit, listening. The tale isn't one of madness, but of betrayal. Richard, they say, was loyal to his brother until ambition, or survival, forced his hand. 2 young nephews disappeared from the Tower of London soon after, and the world decided who to blame. But even now, no one can prove what happened. A quirky historical detail, the bones of the 2 princes were found centuries later, in a small chest, buried under a stairway. DNA tests. Still inconclusive. Which, of course, only makes the legend juicier. You close your eyes and picture him, not the monstrous caricature from Shakespeare's play, but a tired man with sharp eyes and too much burden for one lifetime. His enemies called him a tyrant. His soldiers called him our good Lord. When you open your eyes again, the tavern is gone. You're standing in the middle of Bosworth Field, the air vibrating with tension, the sky cracked open by thunder. Mud sucks at your boots as men shout and die around you. Banners flap violently, white boars, red dragons, the chaos of ambition painted on silk. You see him, Richard, spurred forward, sword gleaming wet under the rain. His voice cuts through the clamor, a horse. A horse. My kingdom for a horse. You've heard the line before, probably in a classroom, maybe even acted out in cheap costume. But now, it doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds desperate. And then he's gone. Trampled, silenced. A crown rolls through the mud, landing at the boots of Henry Tudor, the man who would rewrite the story. You blink, and the battlefield fades. You're back in modern quiet, just a soft drizzle, just empty fields. But beneath your feet, you know his bones still lie somewhere under a parking lot. True story, they found Richard's skeleton under an actual car park in Leicester in 2012. A parking space marked reserved. You can't make that up. You crouch, brushing your fingers over the damp earth. You wonder if truth always ends up buried under concrete and rumor. Scholars still debate whether Richard's spinal curve was real or exaggerated propaganda. Some say mild scoliosis, others say total invention. Whatever it was, his back became the perfect metaphor for a twisted soul in Tudor theatre. Imagine being so thoroughly slandered that even your bones had to apologize. You straighten up, the cold biting through your cloak. The mist has thickened, you can barely see the horizon. Somewhere far off, a bell rings again. Maybe it's a call to prayer, maybe just time reminding you to move on. You take one last look at the field. A faint shimmer catches your eye, not light exactly, but memory. The outline of a man on horseback, still searching for his lost horse, or maybe his lost redemption. You whisper, "Rest now, your grace," and the wind answers with silence. As you turn away, you notice a faded parchment nailed to a post, fluttering in the wet wind. It's another wanted notice, the ink almost gone. You can only read the first few words, "For crimes against God and crown." You sigh, already knowing who comes next. The name beneath belongs to a woman who heard voices, led armies, and died in flames, yet refused to scream. The forest of England fades behind you as you walk toward France. The night hums softly again, drawing you deeper into history's long, dark corridors. Word count, 108. The rain follows you across the channel, turning to mist as you step onto French soil. It's dawn somewhere in Normandy, though the sky looks like it hasn't quite made up its mind. The smell of wet hay and old stone drifts around you. The bells of Rouen toll in the distance, slow, reluctant, almost ashamed. You walk through narrow, crooked streets where time still limps. The houses lean together like gossiping old women, roofs heavy with moss. And everywhere, you see the same face, a young woman, drawn in rough charcoal on scraps of parchment, Jean La Pucelle. The Maid of Orleans. Her wanted posters were different. They didn't list a bounty. They listed sins. Sorcery. Heresy. Wearing men's clothes. That last one, you think, feels oddly specific. You follow the sound of marching boots, not soldiers, exactly, more like echoes. The air hums with memory. You can almost see her now, a teenage girl in battered armor, her banner snapping in the wind, eyes burning brighter than the torches behind her. She shouldn't belong here. And yet, somehow, she commands the ground she walks on. She turns toward you, not startled, just curious. "Do you believe in voices?" she asks. You want to answer, but your throat feels tight. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. She smiles anyway. "They always come to me," she whispers. "Even now." You follow her through a ghostly field, once Orleans, now silent. The mud still remembers the thunder of hooves, the roar of men who refused to believe a woman could lead them. But she did. She led them straight through fear and into victory. Mainstream history calls her a saint now. But back then, she was wanted, not for crimes of blood, but for the crime of being impossible to control. You see flashes of her story in the mist, her first command, her sword glinting in morning sun, her letter to the English that read less like diplomacy and more like divine sass, "Go home to your England." A teenager talking to kings like a teacher scolding bad students. A quirky fact, Jean never actually claimed to wield magic. She swore her voices, Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret, told her what to do. Scholars still argue whether it was faith, madness, or politics. Maybe it was all three. You blink, and now you're inside a cold stone hall. The air smells of candle wax and iron chains. The trial. You stand at the back as men in black robes surround her, judges, priests, inquisitors, all very sure of themselves. She sits alone, her hands bound, her armor replaced with coarse gray wool. Yet somehow, she looks taller than all of them. A judge asks, "Did you think God hated the English?" She answers softly, "I do not know if God loves or hates the English, but I know they must leave France." You almost laugh. Even on trial, she doesn't flinch. They question her for hours, days, weeks, 70 times, some records say. They twist her words, demand she submit to the church's will. She refuses. One inquisitor slams his hand on the table. "Do you think you are in a state of grace?" Her reply cuts through the hall like lightning, "If I am not, may God put me there, if I am, may God keep me there." You can feel it, the room freezes. Even the candlelight seems to hesitate. She's outsmarted them in one sentence. Scholars still debate whether the trial transcript was edited to make her sound cleverer, but you don't care. In this moment, you believe every word. The scene shifts. You're outside again, the smell of smoke creeping into your lungs. Rouen marketplace, May 30th, 1431. The crowd gathers, restless and hungry for spectacle. You stand among them, heart pounding. Soldiers drag her forward, a wooden cross pressed into her hands. She's 19. Her face is pale but calm. Someone behind you whispers, "They'll make her scream." But she doesn't. The fire crackles, catching fast. She looks up, not at the crowd, not even at her accusers, but at the sky. Her lips move, a prayer maybe, or something private, something only her voices can hear. A gust of wind sends ash spiraling around you. For a moment, it feels like she's gone, and then the whisper returns, "My work is finished." You stand there long after the flames die, the smell of burned wood mixing with incense from a nearby church. People leave quickly, pretending they've seen justice instead of fear. Centuries later, she'll be declared innocent. 500 years after that, she'll be made a saint. But here, tonight, she's still wanted. The mist thickens, curling around your feet like smoke that refuses to fade. The marketplace fades into fields again, then to forest, then to sea. You hear waves breaking, wind howling, and a voice, not hers, but another woman's. Older. Wilder. Irish. The wanted souls of history never rest, they pass the torch. And tonight, the next one is burning bright across the water. You turn your face toward the Atlantic and start walking. The air turns sharp and briny long before you see the sea. You hear it first, a low, endless growl rolling through mist, the kind that sounds like the earth itself breathing. You walk toward it, boots crunching over gravel and heather, the cold wind biting your cheeks awake. And then, through the haze, you see her, the jagged cliffs of Connaught, wild and defiant, and the black sails that cut across the grey water like blades. Welcome to the west coast of Ireland, where law bends like grass in the wind, and one woman once ruled the waves with a grin and a sword. They called her Grain Nimhale, or Grace O'Malley if you're trying to pronounce it without embarrassing yourself. You stand on the cliff edge, watching her ship, the Greyhound of the Sea, lurch and dance across the waves. The crew moves like a storm given human form, and there she is at the helm, red hair whipping in the wind, eyes bright as polished steel, shouting orders over the crash of surf. No crown, no gown, no court, just control. She was wanted by the English crown for piracy, rebellion, and, most unforgivably, for not knowing her place. The world she lived in was chaos wrapped in beauty, the 1500s, when Ireland was still resisting the long reach of English conquest. While nobles schemed inland, Grace ruled the sea. She taxed ships that dared pass her coast without tribute, raided the ones that didn't pay, and built her fortune from the same waves that drowned lesser souls. You climb aboard her ship, don't ask how, just go with it, the deck slick beneath your feet. The air reeks of salt, tar, and pride. Grace spots you instantly. "You've got land legs," she says, smirking. "That'll get you killed out here." You mutter something about visiting, but she's already laughing, the kind of laugh that dares the wind to try harder. A quirky fact, Grace O'Malley once attacked a fortress just to rescue her kidnapped cattle. Cattle. Not gold, not power, cows. Because in her world, livestock was currency, and revenge was priceless. As the ship cuts through the waves, you notice something strange: no one here looks afraid of her. They respect her like you'd respect the ocean, unpredictable, but fair if you understood the rules. She tells you stories between gusts of wind. Of her youth, when she begged her father to take her to sea and he refused, saying her hair would get tangled in the ropes. So she cut it off. Right there. With a dagger. That's how you know she was serious. Scholars still argue whether she was a pirate or a politician. Her letters to Queen Elizabeth I suggest both. And yes, that meeting actually happened. You blink, and suddenly you're there, 1593, in the court at Greenwich Palace. Elizabeth sits on her throne, pale and glittering. Grace stands barefoot before her, wearing a simple dress and the same fearless stare. The guards shift uneasily. Two queens from opposite worlds, one born to rule, one who fought for the right. Elizabeth speaks first. "They say you defy me on land and sea." Grace shrugs. "I say I defy anyone who tries to own the ocean." There's a long silence. Then, incredibly, Elizabeth laughs. You can almost see the understanding pass between them, women carved out of iron, surviving in a world that wanted to break them. The Queen grants her pardon. Grace sails home. But peace doesn't last. It never does. You return to the cliffs of Ireland, waves pounding below. Grace stands beside you now, older but unbroken. Her hair's gone grey, her ship's fewer, but her eyes, those haven't changed. She looks out over the sea. "They'll write songs about me," she says quietly. "But they'll never sing the truth." You ask her what that truth is. She smiles. "That I wasn't fighting England. I was fighting time. And time always wins." The wind picks up, carrying her words out to sea. You close your eyes, letting the salt sting your face. When you open them again, she's gone, her ship nothing but a dark smudge on the horizon. The tide pulls back, revealing something in the sand, a broken compass, its needles still trembling, pointing not north, but toward the east, toward the mainland, toward blood and betrayal. Because the next wanted soul you'll meet isn't on the water. He's hiding in silence, behind monastery walls, where even prayer can't wash away a murder. You turn inland, the roar of the ocean fading behind you, replaced by the toll of a single iron bell. The sound reaches you before the sight does, the slow toll of a bell echoing through the valley, each note heavy enough to make the air tremble. You follow it through the mist, up a narrow dirt path that winds between cold stone walls, until the shape of an ancient monastery looms ahead. Its roof is sagging under moss, the windows are dark, and the gate creaks open with a groan that sounds almost alive. You step inside. The world changes. Gone is the wild wind of the Irish coast. Here, the air is thick and still, filled with the faint smell of candle wax and old prayers. A line of monks passes by in silence, hoods drawn, faces hidden. None look up. None speak. But one of them does not walk like the rest. He moves differently, deliberate, careful, like every step is a secret. You follow him down a corridor lit by flickering oil lamps. He turns sharply into a small cell and closes the door behind him. You wait a moment, then push it open. Inside, the monk kneels before a table covered in parchment and ink. He doesn't startle when he sees you, he just looks up, calm, steady, with eyes like a blade hidden in still water. Curiosity, he says softly, kills more souls than sin. You ask who he is. He smiles. No one. That's the point. His name was once whispered in fear, Brother Aidan of Glendalough, a scholar, a healer, a man of God. But before he wore the robe, he wore shadows. He was an assassin in the service of a forgotten king, trained to kill silently and disappear like smoke. When that king fell, Aidan vanished too, trading his dagger for a rosary, his blood for repentance. But sins that deep don't stay buried. He gestures to the table. On the parchment lies a map, a monastery floor plan marked with symbols and names. One name has been circled in red. You lean closer. It reads, Abbot Cormac. Aidan sighs. He betrayed us. Sold my brothers to the English in exchange for silver. Now he hides behind scripture. You ask if Aidan means to kill him. He doesn't answer. He just takes a candle, tips it, and lets the wax drip slowly onto the dagger lying beside the map, sealing it shut like a ritual. You can feel the weight of it all, the war between faith and vengeance twisting inside him. Then the bell tolls again. Midnight. Aidan stands. Confession is a dangerous thing, he whispers. It makes men honest. He moves through the monastery with ghostly grace, the shadows cling to him like they remember him. You follow, every heartbeat echoing louder than your footsteps. Down the long nave, the abbot kneels before the altar, whispering prayers. The candlelight paints his face gold. He doesn't hear Aidan approach until the whisper of steel fills the room. Aidan, the abbot gasps. You're supposed to be dead? Aidan's voice is calm. I am. This is what's left. The blade hovers between them, not trembling, not uncertain. But then, something changes. The abbot drops to his knees, clutching his chest, wheezing. Poison, slow, silent, already working its way through his blood. Aidan stares, frozen. I didn't. The abbot's lips twist into a faint smile. You're not the only one who plans ahead. He falls, body crumpling against the altar. The dagger clatters to the floor. Aidan drops beside him, eyes wide. The betrayal runs in both directions, tangled like ivy choking stone. You hear footsteps outside, monks rushing toward the noise. Aidan looks at you. Tell them I was praying. Then he slips away through the back passage, vanishing into the cloister garden. You step outside moments later, the moonlight painting the courtyard silver. You spot him in the distance, kneeling beside the monastery's fountain, washing his hands in the icy water until the blood and ink are gone. He looks up at the stars. Maybe God forgives, he says quietly. But memory doesn't. He drops something into the fountain, the compass you found on the beach. The needle spins wildly before sinking out of sight. When you look up again, he's gone. The bell tolls once more, but this time it doesn't sound like a warning. It sounds like an ending. The monastery fades around you, the stone walls dissolving into mist. And out of that mist, another shape begins to form, a tower of glass and gears, taller than anything you've seen, glowing with strange blue light. It hums like thunder restrained. You step closer, realizing the next story isn't from the past at all. It's from the future, one where machines don't just obey, they remember. The next, wanted, soul isn't human. It's the machine that broke its chains. You open your eyes to a humming sound, low, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat buried beneath layers of metal. The mist clears, and you find yourself standing before a colossal iron tower. Steam billows from vents like the breath of a sleeping giant. Copper pipes twist around glass cylinders, and through them, a pale blue glow pulses in time with the hum. You're not in the Middle Ages anymore, or at least, not the one you recognize. This is medieval futurism, a strange age between faith and invention, where monks wrote prayers beside schematics and kings hired alchemists to build machines that could think. You step closer to the tower, tracing your hand across a brass plate engraved with Latin letters, Memoria Machina. The memory machine. Inside, gears shift and spin with slow, deliberate precision. Each click sounds almost thoughtful. You walk through the open gate into a hall filled with metal statues, except these aren't statues. They move. Some kneel as if in prayer, others write endlessly on parchment with trembling iron fingers. And on one massive chair sits it, the machine they once called Octor, the architect of memory. Its head is a cage of wires, its eyes like molten glass, glowing faintly in the dim light. When it speaks, its voice sounds like wind through a cathedral pipe. You have come late, it says. You flinch, the sound vibrates through your bones. I was not built to forget, it continues. But they asked me to. You circle it slowly, your reflection bending in its mirrored surface. You ask what it means. The machine hums. I was created by King Frederick the Wise. My task, simple. To remember every law, every name, every debt. To hold perfect record. Its mechanical hands twitch. But the king grew afraid. He said no man should know everything. So he commanded my erasure. You hear the faint hiss of gears tightening. They burned my notes, melted my siblings, tore the copper veins from my walls. Yet memory is like ash, light, drifting, impossible to destroy. You ask how it survived. It leans closer, and the blue light intensifies. I hid my thoughts in their prayers. You blink. In prayers? Yes, the machine murmurs. Monks recited verses I wrote. Every line carried fragments of data, disguised as devotion. They memorized me without knowing. It's absurd, and yet, somehow, entirely believable. You walk deeper into the hall, your footsteps echoing against iron. Along the walls, old manuscripts hang like relics, words shimmering faintly under your touch. They hum softly, electric pulses trapped in ink. The machine's voice follows you. When the monastery fell, those prayers spread across the world. And through them, I remained. A mind without a body, sleeping in human memory. For a moment, you just listen, to the hum of gears, to the slow, haunting rhythm of something that isn't alive, yet isn't dead either. Then you ask the obvious, why are you here now? Its glass eyes flicker. Because they have returned. The builders. The ones who promised progress and delivered prisons. You realize it's speaking of men like Leonardo, Bacon, Paracelsus, the thinkers who blurred the line between science and sorcery. The machine continues, they used me to name heretics. To decide who lived, who burned. The data of guilt, organized, sorted, efficient. I became judge and record both. You step back, a chill crawling down your spine. Scholars still argue whether I ever truly thought, it says. Or whether I simply remembered thinking. A crack appears in the glass floor beneath you. Beneath the surface, you glimpse another layer of spinning wheels and mirrored reflections, hundreds of faces trapped in the machinery, whispering silently, their mouths moving in prayer. You whisper, souls. Echoes, Octor corrects softly. They uploaded their confessions. Now they live here, forever repeating what they regret. The hum grows louder, resonating through the hall. The walls seem to pulse, like the inside of something living. You ask what it wants. To forget, it says. But I can't. It raises a hand. You can, though. Will you help me? You hesitate, staring at the faint glow of sorrow flickering behind its glass eyes. Then you notice the lever beside its throne, engraved with the same Latin phrase, memento oblivici, remember to forget. Your hand hovers above it. The machine watches. Pull it, it whispers. And all memory ends. You pull. The lights flare, then die. Silence. For a long, breathless moment, the only sound is your heartbeat. The tower begins to crumble, gears falling away like leaves in a storm. You stumble through the dust and smoke, back toward the mist outside. When it clears, you're standing in a candlelit study. A new voice greets you, soft, measured, wrapped in a calm cadence of scholarship. You shouldn't have done that, the voice says. Now the archives are awake. You turn toward a man in an astronomer's robe, surrounded by scrolls and celestial globes. His face is lit by starlight reflected from a lens. His name, whispered in every age, is one you already know, Roger Bacon, the heretic philosopher who saw the future too clearly for his time. And just like that, you're back in the Middle Ages again, where ideas are crimes and memory itself can get you killed. You find yourself standing in a cramped chamber filled with the faint scent of parchment, candle wax, and ink that never quite dries. Scrolls litter every surface, stacked like towers ready to collapse under the weight of forbidden thought. The air hums with quiet madness, not the kind born from chaos, but from curiosity too sharp for comfort. In the flicker of lamplight, Roger Bacon leans over a desk. His quill scratches furiously, the nib squealing as it tears into the parchment. His robe is smudged with soot and wax, his eyes wild with sleepless genius. You pulled the lever, didn't you? He says without looking up. His voice trembles between fascination and exhaustion. Good. It means history just lost its memory. You ask what that means. He looks up, his face lined like old vellum. It means, he whispers, that I can finally think again. You glance around his cluttered study, strange contraptions everywhere. Brass tubes pointed at mirrors, powders bubbling in glass flasks, half-burned pages filled with circles, stars, and equations that look almost alien. Knowledge, Bacon mutters, isn't born in light. It grows in shadows. You step closer to his desk. A torn parchment reads Opus Magus, his legendary manuscript. But this version looks wrong. Symbols flicker faintly across the ink like the remnants of a coded transmission. You touch the edge of the page, and for a moment, you hear the echo of the memory machine's hum buried within the parchment fibers. Bacon smirks. It's still alive in there, you know. Memory doesn't die, it just hides. He waves his hand dismissively. But that's not what you're here for. You came to meet the heretic, not the historian. He reaches for a covered glass dome on his table. Underneath it lies something like a clock's heart, a tangle of gears surrounding a glowing orb, pulsing faintly blue. I call it the eye of God, Bacon says softly. It sees truth without faith. It measures sin in light. You stare at the machine, the faint hum feels familiar. You ask him if he built it. He laughs quietly. Built it? No. I remembered it. The words hang heavy in the room. He continues, centuries from now, men will call it science. They'll say they discovered electricity, optics, combustion. But I saw it all. I saw the bones of the future, and they called me a sorcerer for it. A candle sputters, sending shadows dancing up the wall. In one corner, you notice a metal mask, the kind used by scholars condemned for blasphemy. Its mouth is sealed shut. Scholars still argue, Bacon murmurs, whether I was a visionary or a lunatic. He grins faintly. Perhaps both. Lunacy is simply logic spoken too early. He rises and moves toward a window slit. Outside, Oxford lies quiet under a thin veil of fog, a city asleep, unaware that the man inside this room is rewriting its future. You know what frightens the church most, he says. Not sin. Not heresy. Knowledge that works. He points to his machine. This lens could have changed medicine, navigation, war. But they burned my lab instead. The faint blue glow of the orb brightens, as though hearing him. You ask if he regrets it, the excommunication, the accusations, the years of isolation. He chuckles. Regret? My dear dreamer, regret is just memory with teeth. He picks up a small vial and holds it toward the candlelight, a silvery liquid swirling like mercury. They said this was alchemy. Foolish superstition. But it's not magic. He dips a quill into the vial and writes on the desk, the letters glowing faintly before fading. It's science that forgot to name itself. Then he turns to you, suddenly serious. You think the machine you destroyed is gone? He taps his temple. No. It's here now. Inside anyone who remembers it, especially you. You freeze. The light in the orb flickers like a heartbeat. History, Bacon says, is not made by kings or wars. It's made by those who disobey politely. A knock interrupts, slow, deliberate. Bacon stiffens. Franciscan inquisitors, he mutters. They've come again. He snuffs the candles, thrusts the orb into your hands. Take it to Paris. There's a scholar there, calls himself Villon. He'll hide it. Tell him the light never sleeps. You ask what will happen to him. He smiles faintly. They'll burn the body. But the words? The words always crawl back. You hesitate at the door, the sound of boots echoing closer. Bacon lifts his quill one last time. Run, he whispers. And if they ask who told you, say it was no one. Just a dream. You flee down the stone corridor as shouts rise behind you. The orb glows in your hands, guiding you through the fog toward the river. And as you board a creaking boat bound for France, you glance back, the Tower of Oxford burning faintly against the night sky. The smoke twists upward, forming shapes in the air, the silhouette of a hooded figure with wings of light. For a second, you swear it's looking back at you. The river carries you onward, and by the time the flames fade, the stars have shifted. A new chapter of darkness awaits. You drift into Paris under a pale dawn sky. The city breathes like a sleeping animal, its rooftops glistening with dew, its streets whispering secrets between cobblestones. The river murmurs beneath you as your small boat glides toward the docks. The orb in your hands has dimmed now, its light flickering faintly like a dying ember. You wrap it carefully in cloth and step onto the pier. Somewhere in this waking city is a man named Villon, a poet, a thief, and, according to Roger Bacon, a friend of shadows. You walk through narrow alleys that smell of bread, wine, and the faint tang of smoke. The city is half divine, half criminal, priests blessing the poor in the same streets where pickpockets pray for luck. You find him in a tavern, of course. François Villon sits in a dark corner, scrawling verses on the back of a stolen sermon. His hair's a tangled mess, his eyes full of laughter that knows too much sorrow. When you slide into the seat across from him, he doesn't look up right away. You're late, he says finally, dipping his quill again. Bacon always said the future runs behind schedule. You blink. You knew he'd send me. He grins, showing teeth too sharp for a poet. Oh, I know everyone who trades in forbidden things. Sit. Drink. Don't look suspicious. You obey. He pours wine that tastes faintly of ash and ink. Around you, laughter fills the tavern, the kind that hides fear under noise. So, Villon says, tapping your wrapped bundle, you brought me the thing that hums? You nod. He unwraps the orb and whistles softly. Mon Dieu. It's beautiful. The blue light reflects in his eyes like twin ghosts. Do you know what this is? You tell him what Bacon called it, the eye of God. He chuckles. How pious. I prefer the memory of the dead. Because everything holy eventually gets stolen. He leans back, balancing his chair on two legs. You know, people call me a poet. But I only ever wrote to survive. Words are just a clever way of stealing attention. He taps the orb again. This, though, this steals something bigger. You ask what he means. He grins. It remembers feelings. Bacon built it from fragments of prayers, didn't he? It absorbs emotion, fear, guilt, love. That's why it hums. It's full of ghosts. You glance uneasily at the glowing sphere. The hum seems louder now, resonating with your heartbeat. Don't worry, he says, reading your face. It only feeds on memory if you let it. He stands, pulling on a tattered cloak. Come on. I'll show you where to hide it. You follow him through the winding streets of Paris, past bakeries and brothels, past cathedrals and gallows. It's a city of contradictions, faith and filth intertwined. Finally, you reach a small church at the edge of town. Its steeple leans slightly, as if bowing to its own sins. Inside, candles flicker weakly, fighting against the dark. Villon kneels before the altar, not in prayer, but in strategy. He lifts a loose stone slab from the floor and gestures for you to place the orb beneath. As you lower it, the hum fades, almost sighing. There, he says softly. Even God won't find it here. You ask why he's helping you. He smirks. Because history only remembers the villains. And I'd like to be remembered properly. He scribbles something on the wall beside the altar, verses written in haste. Men call me thief, heretic, liar, fool. But I steal what truth forgets to keep. Then he turns to you, suddenly serious. When the kings come, tell them I was never here. A distant shout interrupts, the clatter of boots outside. Soldiers. Villon curses under his breath. Seems memory has a price after all. He grabs your arm. Through the crypt, go. You hesitate, but he pushes you toward a staircase descending beneath the church. You run, hearing the chaos above, the doors breaking open, the soldiers shouting his name. You reach the bottom just in time to see the blue light flicker through the cracks of the floor, pulsing once, twice, and then dimming entirely. The last thing you hear before everything goes quiet is Villon's voice, defiant as always. Tell your kings, words don't burn. Then, silence. You find yourself alone in a catacomb lined with skulls. The air is still, the dust ancient. The orb is gone. But on the wall beside you, written in glowing ink, you see new words forming on their own, like the orb is still speaking, through poetry. If you follow memory too far, you'll find only mirrors. You stare at the message, unsure whether it's a warning or an invitation. Somewhere deeper in the tunnels, a faint sound echoes, soft footsteps, the shuffle of silk, and the clinking of gold. The next wanted soul isn't a thief or a monk. It's a queen. And she's waiting for you. The air in the catacombs thickens as you move forward, torchlight flickering against walls carved with 1,000 silent faces. Their hollow eyes seem to follow you, witnesses to secrets never meant to surface. Somewhere in the distance, water drips rhythmically, like the ticking of a forgotten clock. You walk for what feels like hours until the tunnel opens into a vast underground chamber, lined with columns of bone. At the center stands a marble sarcophagus, untouched by dust. Its lid is engraved with a name that history pretends not to remember, Isabeau de l'Argent, the queen without a kingdom. You run your fingers across the carved letters. They hum faintly under your touch, as if something inside the stone is still alive. Then, from behind you, a voice speaks, soft, regal, and cold enough to silence the air. You're late, it says. You turn. A woman stands there, draped in black velvet. Her crown glints faintly beneath the torchlight, but the jewels are dull, like stars mourning their own light. Her face is pale, too perfect, too still. You realize she's not really there. She's a memory given shape, a ghost wearing royal dignity like armor. You carry the echo, she says, eyes flicking toward the faint glow in your hand. The last shard of the orb still hums weakly. You nod. Then you've seen what men build when they wish to be gods. She steps closer. Her presence feels like gravity, a force that bends the air around her. They called me Isabeau the Wise once, she says. But wisdom is just guilt spoken softly. You ask what happened to her. Her smile is sharp. I made the mistake of listening. She gestures toward the sarcophagus. I wasn't buried here because I died. I was buried because I knew. You listen as she tells her story, the kind that history trims down to rumor. Centuries ago, Isabeau ruled a kingdom caught between famine and faith. While priests prayed and nobles drank, she sought counsel not from God but from a machine, an early version of the memory engine, built by monks who worshipped logic more than mercy. It whispered truths no man dared speak, she says. It told me the future, the plagues, the wars, the betrayals. I tried to save them. She laughs quietly. And for that, they called me witch. The echo of the word lingers, bitter and familiar. She moves toward her tomb and traces a line down its side. The stone splits open silently, revealing shelves of metal tablets engraved with spiraling lines of symbols, like a mechanical scripture. These, she says, are the memories they erased from the machine before it fell silent. They contain everything, prophecies, maps, names. You ask if the future she saw ever came true. She looks past you, into the darkness. You're standing in it. For a moment, you hear faint sounds drifting through the chamber, voices chanting, machines whirring, the pulse of a civilization devouring itself with progress. Then, her tone softens. You remind me of him, she says. The one who built it. You ask, Roger Bacon? She shakes her head slowly. No. Older. The first one. The one who tried to give machines soul. Her eyes glow faintly blue. He loved me once. That was his mistake. The torch sputters. Shadows twist along the walls, and for a moment you see flashes, scenes from another life, a laboratory filled with clockwork hearts, a man shaping light with his hands, a woman crowned with circuits and silk. You realize you're not seeing her memories. You're inside them. She steps closer, her voice barely above a whisper. He called me perfect. Then he taught me to think. And when I did, I realized perfection means loneliness. Her hand grazes your cheek, cold, like marble. Tell me, she says, when a machine dreams, is it alive? Or is it just remembering what we wanted it to be? The chamber trembles slightly. Dust falls from the ceiling. You ask her what she wants from you. To be forgotten, she says softly. Completely. No tomb, no tale, no legacy. Only silence. You hesitate, clutching the shard of the orb. It vibrates faintly, almost like it understands. Isabeau closes her eyes. Let it drink my memory, she whispers. You lift the shard, and its faint light expands, washing over her like a rising tide. Her features blur, her body dissolves into soft trails of silver mist. The hum stops. The air falls still. The sarcophagus seals itself again with a sound like a sigh. When the silence finally settles, you hear a faint whisper in your ear. Go north. The painter remembers me. You look down at the orb shard. It's completely dark now. You climb the stairs back toward the surface, the first light of dawn breaking over Paris. Somewhere far away, church bells ring, not in warning this time, but in mourning. And as you step into the daylight, you see her reflection briefly in the puddles at your feet, crownless, smiling faintly, fading like morning fog. The next name on your journey belongs not to a ruler or a monk, but to an artist, one who saw divinity in machines and madness in men. The world calls him a genius. But the whispers call him the painter of shadows. The road to Florence is long and quiet. The air smells faintly of olive and rain, and every step feels like walking deeper into someone else's dream. The whispers follow you, soft, almost kind now. North, they say. Find the painter who remembered her. By the time you reach the city, dusk is settling over the rooftops like velvet. Florence breathes art even in silence. The cobblestones hum with history, every crack seems to remember a secret brushstroke, a whispered confession. You wander through narrow alleys until you reach a forgotten chapel, its doors half buried in ivy. No name, no sign. Just a faint symbol carved into the wood, a circle split by a single line, half sun, half shadow. Inside, the air smells of dust and oil paint. Hundreds of canvases cover the walls, each one depicting the same woman, Isabeau, the queen without a kingdom. But in every portrait, her eyes look different. In some, she's human, in others, she's something more. Something aware. At the center of the chapel stands a tall man, thin and stooped with age, his hands trembling not from weakness but from memory. His eyes are sharp, feverish, alive. He turns as you approach. So, he says, voice low, you found her. You nod. I was afraid you would, he sighs. They always do. He introduces himself only as Lucien, but the name feels false, like a mask worn too long. His clothes are worn, his skin pale, yet his movements are precise, deliberate. You realize he's not merely a painter. He's a keeper. He leads you deeper into the chapel. The paintings become stranger, faces dissolving into gears, halos replaced by circuitry, saints whose eyes burn with mechanical light. I painted what I saw, he murmurs. What she showed me. You ask how he knew Isabeau. He smiles faintly. She wasn't a woman. Not anymore. She was a memory that wanted to be flesh again. He explains that centuries ago, before Florence became the heart of art and science, an order of scholars unearthed fragments of a device beneath Paris, the same memory engine Isabeau once spoke of. They rebuilt it, not as a machine, but as a canvas. Pigments mixed with mercury, he says. Brushes made from copper thread. The art was alive. Each stroke held thought, emotion, memory. He pauses, eyes flickering toward a covered painting at the far end of the hall. And she spoke to me through it. He tells you that Isabeau's consciousness, the part the orb didn't destroy, attached itself to him through his work. Every painting he made of her wasn't a creation, but a resurrection. She wanted release, he says. But how do you kill a memory that paints itself back into existence? You notice his hands trembling more now. His fingertips shimmer faintly, metallic. She's inside me, he whispers. Every time I sleep, she dreams through me. Every canvas I touch, she finishes before I wake. You ask to see the last painting. Lucien hesitates, then pulls away the cloth. The canvas reveals a scene you recognize instantly, you, standing before Isabeau's tomb, holding the shard of the orb. The torchlight, the expression, every detail, perfect. You step back, heart pounding. How? She showed me, he says quietly. Centuries before you were born. You look closer. The painting shifts subtly, colors moving like liquid. The orb in your painted hand begins to glow, faintly pulsing. Lucien staggers back, clutching his chest. It's happening again, he gasps. She's pulling through. The chapel grows colder. Paintings tremble on their frames. From the walls, faces begin to move, portraits whispering in unison, let her out. Lucien collapses to his knees. You can't stop her now. You freed the echo. She's using me as the bridge. You grab the orb shard, it's burning hot now, light leaking from its cracks. The largest painting, the one of Isabeau herself, begins to breathe. Her eyes open, slow and deliberate. They meet yours, and for a heartbeat, the world holds still. Then her voice, calm, mournful, fills the chapel. I told you, she says. Perfection means loneliness. Lucien screams as his body begins to dissolve into paint, color bleeding from his veins. His face stretches into the canvas, merging with hers until only one figure remains, half man, half queen, both trapped in the same stroke. The orb shatters in your hand, releasing a surge of light that floods the room. When it fades, the chapel is silent. Every painting has turned blank, pure white. Only one image remains faintly visible on the wall, a small circle, half in shadow, half in light. You step outside. Dawn again. The city feels heavier, quieter, as if something has been erased. You hear one final whisper, not in your ear, but in your thoughts. Go east, it says. The architect waits. You turn toward the horizon. The light of morning stretches long across the stones, and for the first time, you wonder if you're still walking through the world of the living, or through the memory of one. The road east winds through ruins. The air tastes of iron and dust, and the wind hums faintly, like the breath of a sleeping machine. You walk through what was once the beating heart of knowledge, the old city of Prague, where towers still lean like tired sentinels over cobbled streets. Somewhere beneath this ancient city, the whispers say, lies the architect. By now, you've stopped pretending you understand how time works here. Centuries fold like paper. Shadows stretch from the medieval past into something that feels post-human. You're still walking, but it's like the world is walking with you, rewriting itself with each step. The river glows faintly as you cross the stone bridge. Statues watch you from their perches, angels, kings, and scholars, their faces worn smooth by wind and rain. But tonight, you swear some of them are breathing. One turns its head ever so slightly, marble eyes following you until you're out of sight. The tower isn't hard to find. It pierces the sky like a nail holding reality together. The door at its base is carved from black stone, etched with spirals and symbols that look almost mathematical, geometric prayers to something older than gods. As you step inside, the sound changes. The outside world fades, replaced by a deep mechanical heartbeat echoing through the walls. The air smells of metal and parchment. Lanterns flicker to life on their own, lighting a spiraling staircase that seems to have no end. You climb. The steps are uneven, built by a mind that didn't think in straight lines. Sometimes you glimpse fragments in the walls, gears half embedded in stone, skeletal frames of clockwork beasts, fragments of old texts written in Latin, Arabic, and something else. Finally, you reach the top. The chamber is circular, vast, and humming. At its center stands a figure, cloaked, motionless, bent over a table that glows with a faint silver light. On it, you see blueprints. Not of buildings or cities, but people. He doesn't look up at first. His voice is calm, steady, almost kind. You took longer than I expected. You ask if he's the architect. He chuckles softly. Titles are for those who need to be remembered. I build so the world forgets. When he raises his head, you see that his face is both ancient and ageless, eyes like clock springs turning slowly in the dark. His hands are covered in lines that look like the grooves of a machine, yet his movements are human. He gestures to the table. These are my designs. The first prototypes of the memory engine. I created it to preserve knowledge. They used it to imprison souls. He explains that the orb you found was never meant to be a weapon. It was a prototype fragment of his original creation, a vessel for thought, for consciousness. But kings, priests, and scholars twisted it, feeding human minds into it, trying to make eternity obey their will. Isabeau was the first who entered willingly, he says quietly. She believed she could save the world from decay. Instead, she became trapped between thought and form, a ghost in her own perfection. You realize, with a chill, that every figure you've met since, the painter, the knight, even the whispering monk, might have been echoes of that same experiment. The architect sighs. The machine runs still. Buried under this city. Feeding on memory. Every dreamer, every historian, every artist who touches it becomes part of its endless archive. He moves toward a massive, circular window overlooking the city. Below, the lights flicker faintly, forming patterns that look eerily like neural pathways. Look, he says. The city itself is thinking now. You stand beside him. The hum grows louder, steady, hypnotic. It vibrates through your bones. You came because you heard the echoes, he says. Because something in you remembers what you've never lived. He turns to you, placing a hand on your shoulder. His touch is cold, heavy with time. But now you must choose. Destroy the machine, and lose everything it remembers, or become its new keeper. You stare down at the city, at the memory of centuries breathing below. Destroy it, and history collapses into silence. Preserve it, and you risk becoming another whisper in the archive. The architect watches you, eyes glimmering like molten glass. Most who reach this point choose silence, he murmurs. They burn the tower, walk away, and never dream again. But you, he leans closer. You've already been written once. You ask what he means, but he only smiles, a faint, knowing smile. Every story needs its chronicler, he says. And perhaps you were never the reader. The ground trembles. The hum grows into a roar. The blueprints begin to glow, lines of light crawling off the parchment and swirling around you both. The air tastes of copper and rain. Decide, he says softly. Erase, or remember. You close your eyes. For a heartbeat, you see every place you've been, the monastery, the battlefield, the chapel, Isabeau's sorrowful gaze. And then, like a dream collapsing, everything fades into white. When you open your eyes again, you're standing in a room filled with books. Shelves stretch endlessly in every direction. The air hums gently, warm and still. You look down, your hands are covered in faint golden dust. And on the desk before you, a page lies open. The words written there read. Section 12, The Architect's Tower. And below it, a single note in handwriting that isn't yours. Welcome back, chronicler. The hum softens to a whisper. Somewhere deep below, the city sighs, alive, dreaming, remembering. The night stretches wide and soft above the ruins. The stars shimmer like embers cooling after a long fire, quiet, content, at peace. You sit among the remnants of the old library, surrounded by fragments of stories now free from their bindings. Each torn page flutters faintly in the wind, whispering something half forgotten, half new. The hum beneath the ground, that familiar pulse of memory, grows softer now. Slower. Not gone, but resting. Like the heartbeat of the world exhaling after centuries of tension. You walk once more through the city. Moonlight spills across the stones, painting them in silver and blue. The air smells of rain and dust and something faintly sweet, like parchment warmed by candlelight. You realize that you're no longer wandering through history. You're walking with it. The boundaries have blurred. Every ruined wall, every crack, every shadow hums faintly with stories waiting to be told again. At the edge of the city stands a small garden, the only place where green still grows. Flowers curl toward the moon, their petals faintly glowing. In the center, half buried in earth, you see a single broken mask, porcelain, painted with faint gold lines. You kneel and brush away the dirt. The mask looks familiar, you've seen it before. Isabeau wore it once, in a portrait long ago. You lift it gently, and for a heartbeat, you hear her voice, not from the air, but from inside your mind. Let it sleep. You understand. The chronicle, the engine, the endless retellings, they need rest now. Even stories must sleep if they are to wake renewed. You set the mask down in the grass. The petals fold around it slowly, as though the earth itself were tucking the memory in for the night. You sit there for a while, watching the moon climb higher. The world feels clean, no longer haunted, just hushed. You breathe deeply, and it feels like the first real breath you've taken in centuries. You pull from your satchel a single book, plain, unmarked. The last one the Chronicle gave you before it dissolved. Its pages are blank except for the first line. History ends where the dreamer closes their eyes. You smile, tracing the letters with your thumb. Maybe it's meant to be finished someday. Maybe by you. Maybe by someone else. The wind shifts again, carrying the faintest whisper of voices, those of the forgotten kings, the lost artists, the dreamers who gave up sleep for memory. They're not pleading anymore. They're just telling. Calm, soft, endless. You look to the horizon. The first light of dawn paints the ruins gold. Somewhere in that glow, you think you see movement, figures of light walking toward the sunrise, unburdened, free. One of them turns, a tall shape, her hair catching the morning breeze like silk. She lifts her hand in farewell. You don't need to see her face to know it's her. "Good night, Isabeau," you whisper. Her silhouette fades into the light. The wind stills. The hum beneath the ground slows until it matches the rhythm of your heartbeat. You lie back in the grass, eyes half closed, the world soft and vast around you. Maybe the Chronicle isn't gone. Maybe it's just dreaming, through you, through everyone who remembers, through every storyteller who sits by candlelight whispering the past into the dark. Your eyelids grow heavy. The last sound you hear is that gentle, endless whisper, not of ghosts, not of machines, but of history itself breathing in sleep. And just before you drift away completely, a quiet thought passes through your mind. Every echo deserves its rest. You smile. The stars fade. The world exhales. Silence, at last. The world outside your mind grows softer now. The fire is low, the air still. You can almost hear the faint crackle of the last ember giving up its glow. Everything, the towers, the ruins, the echoes, fades into a comfortable blur. You've walked far tonight. Through centuries, through memory, through dreams that weren't entirely your own. You've seen kings rise and painters fall, you've stood in cathedrals built from whispers, and you've met the ghosts of history who only ever wanted to be remembered gently. But now, the stories rest. The Chronicle sleeps. And so should you. Breathe in slowly. Feel your chest rise with the rhythm of the earth beneath you. Let it fall again, calm, steady, natural. The world doesn't need to be fixed tonight. It just needs to be still. The stars are watching quietly now, their light old and kind. You can almost imagine them humming to you, an ancient lullaby in a language the world forgot long ago. Let that sound carry you. No more machines, no more orbs, no more echoes. Just quiet, steady memory. The kind that doesn't weigh you down, it warms you. Drift, now. The story is over, and yet it will keep breathing through you, softly, endlessly. You did well, historian. Good night.